Yo, what's up, guys? Like I said in my previous video, today we are gonna watch horrors on the Japanese internet, and I thought the title was a bit interesting. That's why we are gonna watch it. Well, I don't want to make this intro any longer than it is, but if you don't know me, my name is Prince Patel. Subscribe if you're watching this. I don't know what else to say, but anyway, I'm just gonna begin with the video. It's 50 minutes.
August 20th, 2005, a Japanese film called
this is such
Noroi
a
the Curse
good
was
movie.
released, and it was marketed as a documentary too disturbing for the public to see. And what makes this so unsettling is that the movie is so committed to this documentary style that when you're watching it, you keep asking yourself whether what you're seeing might actually be real. The film was directed by Koji Shiraishi, who has become the master of Japanese found footage horror, making films that blur the line between what's real and what's fake so well that people genuinely can't tell if they're watching a movie or actual paranormal documentation. And Noroi doesn't feel like a horror movie at all. It feels like you're watching a real documentary about a paranormal journalist who stumbled onto something he should never have been looking into. The film opens with a warning telling you this is the final documentary made by paranormal journalist Masafumi Kobayashi, and that right after he finished it, his house mysteriously burned down, killing his wife, while Kobayashi himself vanished without a trace. So right from the start, you're told the person who made this footage is gone, and whatever he discovered led to his disappearance and his wife's death, which sets this dark tone before you've even seen anything.
Like I said, it's a pretty good movie. You should watch it.
The documentary starts in
It's
November
pretty good.
2002 with Kobayashi looking into complaints about strange baby-like noises coming from a neighbor's apartment, and the neighbor is this woman named Junko Ishii, who gets violently angry when he tries to talk to her, and just looking at her through the camera you can tell something is seriously wrong. When they get the audio analyzed, an expert tells them it's not one baby crying but 5 babies crying at the same time, which is impossible.
Yeah, what's the scene?
And Junko moves out days later, leaving dead pigeons all over her yard, and the woman who complained dies with her daughter in a car crash 5 days after Kobayashi first talked to her. The film then cuts to seemingly unrelated TV footage about kids developing psychic powers, and there's this girl named Kana who draws 4 hidden images
psychic
perfectly,
powers or
but her
something.
5th drawing is this weird alien face that has nothing to do with what was in the container. Then it switches to another program where actress Marika Matsumoto, who has a 6th sense, goes to visit an old shrine and immediately has a complete mental breakdown, falling down and screaming that she
Maybe I
can
should
hear
stop
a
giving
man's voice.
spoilers, bro. You just watch this video.
And this footage ends up on a talk show where both Marika and Kobayashi are guests, and the producers bring in this psychic named Mr. Hori to check her out. Mr. Hori shows up wearing clothes made of aluminum
this dude was
foil,
the goat
and
in
he's
this movie,
obviously
bro.
unstable, but the second he sees
was unstable,
Marika,
but
he
he's
physically
super-
attacks her, and as they pull him away, he
was one of the
screams
best
at her
characters
to
in this
watch
movie.
out for the pigeons, which connects back to those dead pigeons at Junko's place. Kobayashi gets the full, unedited shrine footage, and when he shows Marika a part she'd never seen, her face goes pale, and the documentary shows her terrified reaction before showing what's on the tape. And since that shrine visit, Marika has been drawing this strange symbol over and over without realizing it. Then Kana disappears, and her parents say a man wearing tinfoil visited her for a week before she vanished, and in her bedroom they find the same symbol Marika's been drawing. Kobayashi goes to Mr. Hori's house, and it's covered in aluminum foil with warnings about ectoplasmic worms. And when he asks about Kana, you can see pain on Hori's face, and he says she was eaten by the worms. Then he draws a rough map focused on a blue building before losing it, screaming Kagutaba over and over. The cameraman notices during Hori's breakdown something weird happened with the video, and there's this distortion that shouldn't be there on analog tape, and frame by frame you can see something in that glitch that looks intentional. And it's one of the scariest moments because it's not a jump scare, it's this hint that something paranormal messed
Yeah,
with
it's
the
like
equipment.
it's not about the
Marika
jump
shows
scare.
Kobayashi's
It's
strange
not about the
yarn
jump scares in
loops
this
she's
movie.
been making in her
Like,
sleep. So he
it's about
sets
the
up a
atmosphere,
camera,
bro.
and the footage shows her
It's a
sleepwalking,
super
grabbing an
creepy
electric
atmosphere.
cord, going to her balcony and coming back. And on the balcony, he finds that same loop pattern made with the cord. Following Hori's map, Kobayashi finds an apartment belonging to Mr. Osawa, who talks to himself constantly and makes loud banging sounds. And when filmed, Osawa walks onto his balcony with no expression, and his balcony is covered with pigeons, but nowhere else has this issue. Through Professor Shioya Kobayashi finds out Kagutaba is a demon from Shimokage village, now underwater, and the villagers would summon it to attack enemies, but it stopped listening and started doing horrible things, so they locked it underground. The last ritual was done by priest Ishii with his daughter playing the demon, but something went wrong and villagers thought she became possessed, and they never did the ritual again, which made Kagutaba angry, starting a curse. And priest Ishii and his wife died right after, and his daughter is Junko Ishii, the disturbed woman from the beginning. When Kobayashi visits the relocated villagers, Junko's house is covered with the same loops Marika creates, and a neighbor reveals she worked at an abortion clinic with rumors she took unborn babies home. The curse spreads, and Midori kills herself, along with 6 others, including Osawa, all who lived near Junko and complained about baby sounds. Kana's father murders his wife, and 4 pigeons fly into Marika's window, killing themselves, and she remembers Hori's warning. Marika decides to do the ritual one more time to end the curse, so Kobayashi gets Hori to help, and they drive to the lake where Shimokage village got flooded, and Kobayashi and Marika take a boat to the middle, leaving Hori on shore. Marika does the ritual and goes limp, and when she wakes, saying she feels better, there's something really off about her now, and Hori freaks out, yelling to leave, and says he sees Kana on the mountain and runs into the woods with Kobayashi chasing him. And in the car, Marika starts making this awful croaking sound and passes out, and when the cameraman stops, she jumps out and runs into the woods, collapsing and screaming. Kobayashi and Hori find dead dogs everywhere and discover an old shrine with the same pattern carved in stone, and suddenly there's a young girl's ghost underneath, surrounded by crawling, unborn babies. The next day, both end up in the hospital, and Kobayashi goes to Junko's house, finding she hung herself in the attic covered with Kagutaba masks, and he finds Kana's dead body with a young boy next to her who isn't Junko's son, and Kobayashi adopts this kid. Marika's life goes back to normal, but Hori gets sent to a mental hospital, and you feel bad for him because he was trying to stay away from the curse, but Kobayashi dragged him into it, leading to his breakdown.
I told you he was the best character.
One
of the best
Kobayashi's house burned
Maybe
down,
he was the
and his
best
wife
character.
died, and he vanished. But a month later, a videotape gets sent to a publishing company showing what happened before the fire. In the footage, Hori, who broke out of the mental hospital, shows up at Kobayashi's house with a rock and grabs the adopted boy, beating him, screaming. This boy killed Kana, and in this disturbing shot, the bloodied boy stands there and his face looks exactly
I told you
like
that
Kagutaba,
kid is bad
and you
news.
can see Kana's ghost in the corner watching. Keiko goes limp, making that croaking sound, then pours gasoline all over herself and lights herself on fire while Kobayashi screams, and he grabs the camera one last time before everything cuts to black.
Such a good movie, bro. Like,
What makes Noroi so effective and so deeply unsettling isn't just what happens, but how it's shown, because everything about this film is designed to look and feel like a real documentary from the early 2000s. From the square aspect ratio to the way random people's faces are blurred out just like they would be in actual Japanese documentaries, to the camcorder, look to the way the whole investigation plays out in this very natural way that doesn't feel like a movie at all. There are no scary music cues, there are no jump scares, there's nothing that screams, "This is a horror film." It just shows itself as documentary footage and lets what happens speak for itself. And that commitment to making it feel real is what makes it way more disturbing than a regular horror movie, because part of your brain keeps asking if maybe this could actually be real. But 3 years after Noroi in 2008, Shiraishi made Ura Horror a collection of short paranormal documentaries shot in the same low-quality style, and at around the 40-minute mark, there's one segment that has haunted people for over a decade. It starts with a young guy named Goto being interviewed, and he explains that he was at a club party with friends filming everything, and one of the friends in that video ended up killing themselves, and he thinks what happened that night is connected. And the interview cuts to footage of Goto and his friends at a table, laughing and drinking, looking exactly like amateur camcorder footage from a college party. The group is having fun until one friend points out this woman sitting alone across the club, and her skin is so pale it's almost white as paper, creating this huge contrast with everyone else in these warm-colored lights. But where she's sitting, the lighting is this harsh, clinical white that makes her look washed out and lifeless. She's alone, but seems to be actively talking to someone even though there's nobody there, and Goto says something just felt really wrong about her, and the whole group becomes focused on this woman because she's so visually strange and unsettling. The party ends and most leave, but Goto and two friends head to the train station, and as they're going, a warning pops up saying that watching more may cause serious harm to your physical and mental health. The three are standing on the platform when they notice the pale woman on the other side waving at them, and then she takes a few steps forward and jumps right in front of the oncoming train, and all they can do is just stand there in shock. The footage goes dark, then comes back, but this time there's no sound, just this haunting droning noise, and you're watching what happened frame by frame. And even though the camera quality is bad, you can see the woman's body on the tracks. The video keeps playing those last 10 seconds over and over, and as one of Goto's friends falls to the ground in shock, the camera shakes for a split second, and in that shake you catch a glimpse of something standing there where nothing should be. What makes this segment work so well is the exact same thing that makes Noroi so effective, which is that every single detail is designed to feel completely real. The square aspect ratio, the blurring of random people's faces, the camcorder look the natural way, the friends talk to each other. Everything about it screams, this is real amateur footage. The pale woman is terrifying, but not in the way traditional horror movie monsters are, because her movements are stiff and robotic. Her face never changes. She never blinks, and even when the camera zooms in, you still can't really make out what she looks like, because she looks more like a wax dummy than an actual person. And she never actually does anything threatening. She just watches from far away. Then she dies. Then she shows up in the footage anyway. People who saw this part without knowing it was from a horror anthology often genuinely believed they were watching real documentary footage of something paranormal, and that shows you just how convincing Shiraishi's style really is. He doesn't need to make you believe it's real. He just needs to make you ask yourself that one question: was this real? And let that feeling stick with you long after the movie ends.
Case 2.
In 2009, a piece of footage started circulating on YouTube that most people mistook for an actual documentary about a Japanese family. And what makes this so disturbing is that even after you realize it's not real, there are things hidden in this footage that will make your skin crawl. Things the filmmakers never directly show you, but are right there in the frame waiting for someone to notice. The footage is presented as a documentary by a Western filmmaker named Veronica Addison, who's documenting large families in Japan because of the country's declining birth rate, and the production quality is intentionally bad with cheap graphics and awkward narration that makes it feel like something you'd stumble across on public access television. She's following the Yura family, which consists of a mother, a stepfather, and 7 children, and from the first breakfast scene, you can tell something is fundamentally wrong beyond normal dysfunction. The stepfather is 39, but the eldest daughter is 24, which means he only recently joined this family, and we learn the biological father disappeared 7 years ago with no explanation about what happened or whether anyone investigated. There's a shrine in the background with a photo that you assume is for the missing
someone
father,
definitely
but
killed him.
nobody addresses it. And during this first meal, the 16-year-old daughter Ria violently attacks the stepfather, and nobody stops her except the mother, while the rest of the family just continues eating like this is completely normal.
Normal teen behavior, if you ask me.
Then we discover the eldest son, Guki, who's 23, is a shut-in who never leaves his room, and his mother brings him meals through a barely open door. And when you get brief glimpses inside, his walls are covered with calligraphy and writing nobody explains. We also learn the eldest daughter, Ringo, who's 25, left for Tokyo 3 years ago, but nobody's contacted her for 6 months, and the stepfather finds her working at an escort service under the stage name Apple, which matters because Ringo literally means apple in Japanese. The stepfather brings Ringo home by paying off a $50,000 debt, and this is presented as heartwarming. But around the same time, the 17-year-old son, Ryuta, falls from the second story and ends up hospitalized with a serious head injury. One of the younger children mentions another sibling, Ron, had a similar accident the year before, and then we find out another child named Takaharu drowned at age 9. So this family has had an unusual amount of tragic accidents and deaths and disappearances. The documentary shifts into talking about how the family believes their house is cursed because of a ghost photograph, and that all their misfortune is paranormal, and Veronica seems to buy this supernatural explanation completely. But if you actually pay attention to what's happening in the background of certain scenes, there are things that suggest something far worse than any ghost story, things the documentary never highlights but are just sitting there in the frame for anyone observant enough to catch. Then there's the scene where Ryuta falls from the second floor, and if you watch the window in the background very carefully for just a split second, you can see the mother standing there right after he falls, watching him on the ground. And the implication is absolutely chilling because it suggests she might have pushed him out that window. There are shots of fruit baskets with knives stabbed into them appearing multiple times throughout the documentary, and nobody ever explains what they mean. But the first time you see this basket, there are 2 knives, one stuck into a lemon and another stuck into a dragon fruit. This matters because one of the children is named Raymon, which is the Japanese loan word for lemon, and another child is named Ryota, which can be spelled with kanji characters that can also be read as dragon. So these pieces of fruit with knives stuck in them are basically symbolic targets, showing which family members might be next on the mother's list. When you see this same basket appear again later in the documentary, there are even more knives stuck into different fruits, and you start to realize this is the mother's way of marking her next victims. There are extended shots of the mother tending her vegetable garden with this permanent frozen smile that looks completely unnatural, and at one point she screams at children for playing near it, telling them she doesn't care if they go missing. One child mentions their dead cat Enrique was buried in that garden, but people analyzing this footage believe the missing father is probably buried there too, which explains why the mother is so protective of that area and refuses to move houses even when the stepfather suggests it. There's also this detail about insurance, where a younger child doing homework says his mother is always talking about life insurance, and we know after 7 years the missing husband was declared legally dead, which let the mother collect his insurance and remarry. The stepfather wants to use this insurance money to move, but the mother is strongly against it, and if you have a body buried in your garden, you're obviously going to want to stay put. Ringo is filmed multiple times adding powder to food served specifically to the stepfather, and a younger child mentions this dish was a favorite of both the previous husband and the cat, Enrique, who are both now dead. And when this child brings this up, the mother immediately cuts him off. Later, you see Ringo whispering something to her shut-in brother Guki that the camera can't pick up. And shortly after, Guki finally leaves his room to go on a family camping trip, which is where the mother has her accident falling off a cliff into a coma. Guki's wall calligraphy includes messages that can be read as either mother is the best or mom is psycho, depending on interpretation. And at the end, Veronica says the Yura family is psycho, which could be Japanese slang for awesome, or her actual English opinion that this family is mentally disturbed. The film never clarifies which meaning is intended. The prevailing theory is the mother killed her first husband for insurance money and buried him in the garden, and has been systematically trying to kill off some children to collect more payouts, and some older children, particularly Ringo and Guki, have figured this out and are either helping her or trying to stop her. The stepfather appears genuinely good, with no idea what family he married into, and by the end has likely been slowly poisoned by Ringo's food. But the documentary also presents the paranormal explanation with the cursed photograph and ghost haunting, and technically nothing definitively proves the supernatural isn't the real cause. The film is deliberately constructed so you can interpret it either way depending on what details you focus on, and this ambiguity is what makes it so unsettling because you're never given a clear answer. What makes this footage so effective and so disturbing is that none of these sinister details are ever directly pointed out or explained to the viewer. There are no jump scares or sudden zoom-ins or red circles highlighting the mother lurking in the background or standing in windows right after accidents happen. The filmmakers just let all of this horrifying
It also adds to the fact that they don't use mask in this. They don't use masking. So it's like everything's in view. It's not that heavily edited. Everything's view. Like usually when movies use mask, they highlight something going on in the screen or highlight the main character. But here they're not using it.
Text sit there in the
That
frame,
makes it more
trusting
scary.
that some viewers will eventually notice these details. People watching this for the first time usually think it's just a weird documentary about a dysfunctional family, but then they read comments or watch it again, looking for hidden details, and suddenly realize they were watching something much darker than they understood. That delayed realization that you missed all these sinister things happening right in front of you is what makes this footage stick with people long after finishing it, and why this obscure mockumentary from 2009 still gets talked about and analyzed years later by people trying to figure out what they actually saw.
Case 3.
In October 2021, a YouTuber who runs a channel called DE Terra Deep Terror Show uploaded footage of what started as exploring a reportedly haunted mountain tunnel at 3 a.m. that turned into one of his most terrifying encounters with unexplained phenomena and uncontrollable fear. The solo investigator arrived at Old Meba Tunnel, a long abandoned passageway buried deep in forest and rock that had gained a reputation online as a haunted spiritual site, explaining this was re-edited footage from an earlier uncut live stream with a clear warning that he didn't recommend visiting such locations. For the first several minutes, the video shows pretty much exactly what you'd expect from this kind of late-night exploration content. Just a guy approaching a forgotten tunnel with working lights inside, explaining the local legends about an 11-year-old boy supposedly dying in a motorcycle accident there, though he clarifies the accident actually happened elsewhere, and the tunnel already had haunting stories before that modern tragedy. But right from the start, you can sense something's going wrong when he enters the narrow tunnel and immediately notices the sound changes dramatically, with his footsteps and voice echoing unnaturally, while water dripping from the ceiling creates rhythmic sounds that occasionally don't match the dripping pattern, making him stop to listen carefully to what sounds like continuous footsteps echoing faintly somewhere deeper in the tunnel, despite no wind, cars, animals, or other people being present.
到着しました。ここをね、歩いていきたいと思います。
I mean, it doesn't look that creepy, but being there
中に入るとね、
alone is so creepy.
声が響く感じになりますね。そんなに長いトンネルではないので、照明がね一応あるんで明るいトンネルとなっております。よくねネットでね検索すると、ここでね11少年がバイク事故で亡くなったというね、話をね見るんですけど、ここではないらしいです。 でその純一少年が亡くなるっていうね話の前からもともと少年の霊が出るという疑惑がね噂水が垂れてきた上からもともとねそういう疑惑があります。今半分は来たかな。
I'm so invested in this. I can't understand what he's
ちょっ
saying.
とぼやけてるなんで
Still.
ちょっと画面ちょっとぼやけてる。ピントあったか感じです。
Where are the
上
subtitles?
から水がポタポタ垂れてきてちょっと気持ち悪いですね。こういうシミがね、
気持ちいい。
今水の音じゃない音がこの先から聞こえたような気がしま
He
す。
said something about water.
水がねポタポタ垂れてきてそういう音はね結構するんですけど、今日は風がないですね。
He said something about wind. There's no wind or something. Or there's wind, I don't know.
今現在時刻は3時なったぐらいかな。
3 years or something, I don't know.
まあ人は全く通らない時間ですね。
I don't know Japanese, so I have no clue what he's saying. I was just guessing some things.
そろそろトンネルが終わりに近づいてきましたね。
So he said something along the tunnel is
雲の霊
finally
が出るっ
ending.
ていうのがちょっと怖いですね。
Oh, it's a bit scary or something, he said. I don't know.
今一旦トンネルを抜けたところです。一旦ね、
We heard something.
そんないきなり葉っぱ落ちてくる。
Damn, if I ever heard something, I
うわ
would
今
just.
すごい鳥肌立ってきた。今はね一旦このトンネルを戻るんですけど、このトンネルの上
Yo, what's that?
が行けるみたいなんで一回戻ってまたルートを探
Maybe
し
I'm
たい
just
と思います。
paranoid. Pareidolia.
この両方ね画面がねこっち
Where do you
なんだ
stop?
と声が響いてるだけ。もともとね気温はかなり低いんですけどここ帰りの方が寒い気がしますね。
Something about cold. It's hot and cold
じゃあ
or
後ろ
something.
怖い。で両方見えるか。後ろのね画面が見えてる状態ってめちゃくちゃ怖いんですよ。
Buddy, I can't read or
Skyrim, right?
understand Japanese.
最初インカメで撮ってたんですけど
Oh wait, there's
暗くて
subtitles?
変えたんですよね途中で。ここが真ん中あたりですねまた。
As the explorer continued walking through the
Bruh.
tunnel, water began dripping more heavily from the ceiling and splashing onto his body, while the sensation of being watched grew stronger, making him constantly check behind him since the echoes of his own footsteps sounded like someone else walking just a second behind him. When he completed the first crossing and decided to go back through, the return trip felt psychologically much heavier, despite being the same tunnel with the same lights and same dripping water, forcing him to become hyper-aware of camera angles to capture capture anything that might appear behind him. He left the tunnel to climb a dangerous mountain path with loose rocks, eroded cliff faces, and steep slopes to find the true source of the haunting legends. A headless Jizo statue hidden deep in the forest that locals believed was the real reason the tunnel was considered haunted, since damaged Jizo statues are associated with restless spirits and curses in Japanese folklore.
なんていう道なんだ、ここ結構危険ですね。崩れてきそうな壁ですね。なんか切り通しみたいな感じになってるんですかね。なかなかの山道になってます。怖いな。なんかめちゃくちゃ周り気になるな、ここ。
Whoa, bear sign. Wait, there are bears in Japan.
お、
Is that the one?
ありましたね。
Yeah.
うわ、ちょっとゾワゾワしますね。首のないお地蔵さん。ここが旧前場トンネルの上になりますね。まあなんかお地蔵さんがあるんですけど、なんか神聖な感じは特にしませんね。ここにクマ出没注意。いや、これは怖いけど今は冬だから大丈夫でしょう。なんかすごい山道になってるんですけど、これは何の道なんだろうな。そこにもね、なんか上に登る階段があって、もっと上に行けるのか。なんでこんなところにお地蔵さんがあるんですかね。かなりね、崖崩れとかも、それが一番危ないような気がしますね、ここの道は。じゃあここで三脚をね立ててちょっととどまりたいと思います。周りはね本当に真っ暗です。もうすぐ4時になりそうかな。
When he discovered the stone Jizo figure standing alone in complete darkness, its head was completely gone, with 2 stones carefully stacked on the neck by someone as intentional placement rather than natural debris, while coins left as offerings at the base showed locals still acknowledged this place as spiritually significant or dangerous. The explorer felt
What
no
happens if we knock
sense
them
of
out?
peace or protection that some previous visitors had described, only deep unease surrounded by pitch black forest with bare warning signs and no civilization for miles. But the most
Bears are
disturbing
scary.
realization was how the original tunnel haunting legends had merged with the unrelated accident story to create a more terrifying reputation. Then something happens that completely changes everything. As he walked back down the mountain path after examining the statue, sudden intense goosebumps spread violently across his entire body
Is he walking
without any
faster?
cold wind or logical reason, followed by a strange, unnatural sound that wasn't water, wind, leaves, or animals, causing instant panic that made him abandon all calm investigation and sprint away from the tunnel while the camera shook violently as he ran breathlessly to his car.
Alright, let's see that.
なんか今ちょっと気づいたんですけど、首がないお地蔵さんの上に石が2つずつ積まれてるんですよ。なんでなんだろう。何か意味があるのかな。首の代わり。ちょっと気味悪いですね。まあお地蔵さんに気味悪いっていうのも あんま良くないんでしょうけど、そのね、もともと首から上ちょっとね、最後帰ろうとした時にかなり鳥肌がねバリバリに来たんで、ちょっと帰り道も撮ろうかなと思います。最後は一応お参りもねしてきました。
Oh, yeah.
うわ、僕は逆さなったぞ。
Started running, he started sprinting. This sounded like a bear though. Or an animal. A deer or something. I don't know.
The explorer fled all the way to a convenience store before finally calming down, openly admitting he lost composure and regrets panicking, but acknowledging the sound felt genuinely threatening in ways he couldn't rationally explain. Whether the footsteps he heard throughout the investigation were only water dripping or something walking beside him in the darkness, the combination of legends, complete isolation, unexplained sound anomalies, and uncontrollable psychological pressure created one of the most disturbing explorations he'd ever experienced, despite capturing no clear voices or undeniable proof. His experience at Old Maeba Tunnel proves how certain locations can affect people through atmosphere alone, where ancient folklore, physical isolation, sensory distortion, and the power of suggestion combine to create encounters that feel supernatural regardless of their true nature, demonstrating that sometimes the most terrifying investigations are those where you never see anything concrete but can't shake the feeling that something invisible was present and aware of you in the darkness.
Case 4, finally.
In a quiet district of Tokyo, a family of 4 was brutally murdered in their own home, and what makes this case so disturbing isn't just the violence, but what the killer did afterwards, because after murdering an entire family, including 2 young children, the perpetrator stayed in the house for at least 2 hours calmly eating ice cream and using the family's computer while their bodies were still lying throughout the home. Despite having what police called a mountain of evidence, including fingerprints, DNA samples, clothing items, and even the killer's unflushed feces, they still haven't identified who did this after over 2 decades. The Miyazawa family lived in the Setagaya district and consisted of Father Mikio, age 44, Mother Yasuko, 41, their 8-year-old daughter Niina, and 6-year-old son Rei, and they were a well-liked family with no known enemies. By the year 2000, most neighbors had moved away, and the Miyazawas were one of only 4 homes left in the area, and they had already sold their land to the city. But Yasuko delayed moving because she worried about how it would impact their children, especially Rei, who had a developmental disorder. The night of December 30th, 2000 started normally with the family shopping for New Year's before returning home for a relaxing evening of dinner and TV, and then they went to bed not knowing what was about to happen. Sometime after 11 p.m., a man approached through the nearby park and climbed a fence to reach the second-floor bathroom window, and after removing the screen, he entered the house. The killer's first victim was 6-year-old Rei, who was sleeping in the bedroom closest to the bathroom window, and while Rei slept, the killer strangled him to death and left his body in bed. Rei was the only victim to be strangled. The killer then turned to Father Mikio, who was still awake on the first floor, and here the details become unclear, but Mikio either heard the commotion and rushed upstairs, or the killer came down to him, and during the fight, the perpetrator pulled out a sashimi knife and stabbed Mikio multiple times. Mikio's body was found at the base of the stairs with multiple stab wounds, and a fragment of the sashimi knife still embedded in his skull. The last victims were Yasuko and Niina sleeping in the attic, and they were attacked in their beds based on bloodstains on the futon. And when the killer's sashimi knife broke, he went to the kitchen and got a regular knife, to finish the murders. Both mother and daughter tried to escape down the ladder connecting the attic to the main house, but were killed, and their bodies were found at the top of the stairs hunched together, and Naina's body was missing teeth, showing she was beaten as well as stabbed. 8-year-old Nina was the last to die, but what happened after the murders is what earned this case the nickname the Goldilocks murder, because the perpetrator stayed in the house for at least 2 hours doing bizarre things. Evidence shows the killer calmly walked past, the bodies went to the kitchen and took out ice cream, barley tea, and possibly melon, and started eating only minutes after the murders. And he didn't use a spoon, but squeezed the tubs and took bites, directly leaving saliva and fingerprints everywhere. While eating, he found the first aid kit and patched up a cut on his hand, leaving bloody bandages on the counter. When Yasuko's mother found her son-in-law's body the next morning and called police, investigators thought this would be easy to solve because of the massive evidence left behind, but this couldn't have been further from the truth. The clothing let police create a detailed composite showing he wore a gray bucket hat, white baseball shirt with purple sleeves, a plaid scarf, Uniqlo jacket, black gloves, gray and black fanny pack, and Slazenger sneakers, size 27.5 centimeters. DNA showed he was male with type A blood, and his feces showed his last meal was string beans and sesame seeds, and police determined he was between 15 and 35 years old, around 5'6" or 7" and slender. His fingerprints showed no matches in Japan, meaning no criminal record. When police investigated the origin of the Slazenger sneakers, they discovered that the size the killer wore was never sold in Japan, but they were sold in South Korea, and this allowed them to narrow down their search to someone who had either lived in or visited Korea. Korean law requires everyone over 17 and all visitors to provide fingerprints, which are held in a national database, so Japanese police worked with the Korean government to run the fingerprints against their database and found absolutely no matches, leading to another dead
Maybe
end.
he was
The
South
second
Korean.
piece of clothing
Maybe
that
he
really
got
expanded the scope of this
imported
investigation
them.
was the fanny pack, because when police analyzed its contents, they found skateboard grip tape, trace amounts of the men's cologne Drakkar Noir, and small amounts of sand. And when this sand was analyzed, it was determined to have come not from Japan, but from Los Angeles, California, specifically from an area near the Edwards Air Force Base in the Mojave Desert. This discovery completely changed the direction of the investigation and landed police back at the drawing board.
This guy was
trying
smart.
to
He was
figure out how
on
sand
something.
from a U.S. military base ended up in a killer's bag in Tokyo. The investigation has lasted over 24 years, involved 16,000 pieces of evidence, 15,000 tips, and over 250,000 investigators, making it the largest investigation in Japanese history. And today, the 92-year-old grandmother still stands at the Chitose Karasuyama station, handing out flyers, hoping someone knows something that could bring her family's killer to justice. The house is still guarded 24/7 by Tokyo police, and in 2010, Japan abolished the statute of limitations for murder, meaning the killer can still be prosecuted. But after all these years and all this evidence, the case that everyone thought would be easy to solve remains
Maybe
one of
he's a
Japan's most
foreigner. He
baffling,
ordered those
unsolved
things
mysteries.
from friends. Case 5. Okay. Bonus spam.
What does it mean to vanish? Not just ghosting someone or going off grid for a weekend, but actually disappearing where nobody knows what happened to you. I think about this sometimes when driving alone at night, how easy it would be to take a wrong turn and suddenly you're just gone and nobody would know where to start looking. If you asked me in the mid-1990s what the scariest thing about a road trip was, I probably would have said getting lost without GPS or running out of gas in the middle of nowhere. But I wouldn't have thought about the idea that you could cease to exist and your car could be sitting at the bottom of a harbor for over 20 years before anyone thought to look there. It's the kind of thing that sounds impossible in our modern world where everyone is constantly tracked and monitored. But back in the 1990s, before smartphones and social media, it was actually pretty easy to just disappear disappear. In Japan during the 1990s, there was this phenomenon called tests of courage, where young people would visit supposedly haunted locations at night to prove they were brave. And these weren't just teenagers going to an abandoned house on a dare. These were organized trips to specific Shinrei spots that had reputations for being genuinely cursed or haunted. You could buy magazines listing the most haunted locations in different prefectures, and people planned
That's
road trips
interesting.
around visiting them, almost like how American teenagers might go to movies or the mall, except instead you're deliberately seeking paranormal experiences.
So what, the video is over? Oh, there's still more.
On May 5th, 1996, the last day of Golden Week holiday, two 19-year-old girls from Himi City decided to participate in one of these tests of courage. Megumi Yashiki and Narumi Takumi had heard about an abandoned hotel 60 kilometers east called the Tsubono Spa Hotel, which had become one of the most notorious haunted locations in Toyama Prefecture. The hotel had a dark history because in the early 1980s, the manager disappeared after filing for bankruptcy, and the building was sold at auction, but too expensive to tear down, so the city just barricaded it up. Megumi and Narumi had supposedly visited Tsubono twice before, although some reports say this might have been their first actual trip. On the night of May 5th, after Narumi finished work, she bought a pen light and batteries for their flashlights, and at around 9
I do
p.m.
wear
both
pen
girls
light,
got
but
into
take a better
Megumi's
light.
black Subaru Vivio and started
Oh,
driving toward
Subaru.
Uozu. Since cell phones weren't common yet, they
A
used a
pager.
pager to tell their families they were going to Uozu, and at 9:30 p.m. they stopped at Keiomaru Park to tell friends about their plans. At 10 p.m. they were seen refueling at a gas station, and their car was spotted driving toward Uozu, and at 11 p.m. a friend received a pager message saying, "We are in Uozu." Those 4 words were the last anyone ever heard from them. Police initially thought the girls ran away, so they stopped actively searching, but after a month, families got worried. Toyama police conducted large searches in June and October, covering routes between Himi and Tsubono, but found nothing. And with no witnesses, it became a national mystery. The whole thing is just
Like, where did
layers
it
of
go?
strangeness that don't quite add up. You have witnesses who claim they saw the car go into the water but waited nearly 2 decades to report it. You have police who received this information but sat on it for 6 more years before acting. You have anonymous internet posts from 2001 that describe events in disturbing detail that may or may not be connected. And you have a father who openly doesn't trust the official explanation but can't get any answers from authorities. Even the basic timeline doesn't make complete sense, because if the girls were heading to Tsubono Hotel, which was 60 kilometers away, why would they end up back at Keiomaru Park, which was much closer to where they started, unless they really did change their minds, or unless something happened that forced them to turn around. I think about Megumi and Narumi sometimes when I'm driving at night, how they were just 2 teenagers looking for an adventure and trying to prove their courage by visiting a scary place, and how that decision led to them disappearing for 24 years while their families wondered what happened to them. It's one of those cases where even after the bodies are found and the official investigation is closed, you still don't really have any answers. Just more questions and a lot of speculation about what might have really gone wrong that night in 1996. The Tsubono Spa Hotel still stands there today, abandoned and decaying, overlooking the city below. And while the girls never made it there,
Spa Hotel. Alright, wait, let me check this. Ooh, I found the place, I found the place. Found it. Historical landmark. The bike and fell over, something scary is going to happen. Oh, the building is gone. Okay. Oh, they destroyed it. Oh. Oh, they destroyed it. Oh, that's why I couldn't see it. Wait, can I get a timeline of this? Let's see more dates. September. Oh, this is in September 2021. It was still here. (2014). Oh, it's more visible now. So this was the hotel. Okay. Ooh. I can't see properly, bro. Wait one more time. Yep, now I can see it. Oh, it's a shrine, or is that a cemetery? I don't know. But yeah, it is there. Oh, but it's gone now. Maybe I thought I'll visit it. Well, it's already been more than an hour. Okay. I gotta close this video now. It's been so long. Well, you know what? Sorry. You know what? I'll see you again with that Korea video. Or it's from Korean internet, or I don't know what was the topic, but I'll see you then. Until then, enjoy my videos. If you enjoyed, that is. I don't think anyone enjoys my video. But anyway, see ya. Bye.